Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. This channel is home of at least one college football video every single day. The new playoff rankings are out this week. Really not all that much movement, but we could see one of the wildest endings to a college football season this year. A lot of scenarios in play. First, let's go through the rankings. Number 1, still Georgia, 10-0, mowing people over left and right. Number 2 also stays the same, Alabama, 9-1. Number 3 stays the same, Oregon, 9-1. Number 4 stays the same, Ohio State, 9-1. Number 5 stays the same, Cincinnati, 10-0. Number 6 stays the same, Michigan, 9-1. Number 7 stays the same, Michigan State, 9-1. Here's where things start to change a little bit. Number 8, Notre Dame rises one spot, 9-1. Number 9, Oklahoma State, they're 9-1. They rise a spot. Number 10, Wake Forest rises 2 spots, 9-1. Number 11, Baylor also rises 2 spots, 8-2. Number 12, Ole Miss rises 3 spots, 8-2. Number 13, Oklahoma falls 5 spots, 9-1. Number 14 stays the same, BYU, 8-2. Number 15, Wisconsin up 3 spots, they're 7-3. Number 16, Texas A&M down 5 spots, 7-3. Number 17, Iowa up 3 spots, 8-2. Number 18, Pitt up 3 spots, 8-2. Number 19, San Diego State up 3 spots, 9-1. Number 20, NC State down 4 spots, 7-3. Number 21, Arkansas up 4 spots, 7-3. Number 22, UTSA up 1 spot, 10-0. Number 23, Utah up 1 spot, 7-3. Number 24, Houston. They were non-ranked last week. They're 9-1. Number 25, Mississippi State. They were non-ranked last week, 6-4. So let's go through best case scenario for each team in the playoff rankings right now. For Georgia, well, they're going to go undefeated and head to the SEC championship game. There's no way Charleston Southern or even Georgia Tech will come within 5 touchdowns of the Bulldogs. Not going to happen. Now, for Alabama, they have 2 tough games. They get number 21 Arkansas at home and then travel to Auburn for the Iron Bowl. Now, if they win out, simple enough, they're going to the SEC championship. But if they lose just one of those games, and especially if they lose both of those games, other teams could win the SEC West and Alabama could be left out. We'll get to those other teams in a minute. Now, number 3, Oregon. They have at number 23 Utah and Oregon State at home. Now, for Oregon, as long as they beat Oregon State, it really doesn't matter if they lose to Utah. They'll still get to the Pac-12 championship. However, if they do lose on the road to Utah, they're probably out of the playoffs. Now, if Oregon State beats Arizona State, that Oregon State-Oregon game could be really interesting, especially if Oregon loses to Utah. So, as good as they're looking right now, as far as their situation goes, Oregon could be headed for a big fall and a very letdown ending to their season. So, there's still a lot to be decided in the Pac-12. Number 4, Ohio State. Man, they have number 7, Michigan State, and at number 6, Michigan. Probably the toughest ending for any schedule in the nation right now. Now, of course, if they win out, they're good to go. They're headed to the Big Ten Championship. But if not, yeah, Michigan State definitely have a shot. Number 5, Cincinnati. They are undefeated. They're going to play SMU, who's 8-2, and at East Carolina. As long as they win one of those games, they're headed to the AAC Championship. But Cincinnati needs to win out if they want any shot of getting to the playoffs. And they do still have a shot to get into the top 4 because, like I said, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State, they're all going to be going through some big-time games. Nothing is decided ahead of Cincinnati right now. Number 6, Michigan. They get at Maryland. And number 4, Ohio State. If Michigan beats Ohio State, they still need Michigan State to lose another game for them to get into the Big Ten Championship game. So they still need a little bit of help to get to the Big Ten Championship game. Speaking of Michigan State, they are number 7. Last 2 games at number 4, Ohio State. Then a home game against Penn State. Michigan might actually be rooting for the Buckeyes against Michigan State. Could you imagine that? A Wolverine fan being forced to root for the Buckeyes. Well, that's the situation they're in. And then the next week, they need to beat the Buckeyes to get to the Big Ten Championship game. So that's their scenario. They need Michigan State to lose at Ohio State, and then Michigan beat Ohio State the next week. Because I don't think Michigan State's going to lose to Penn State at home. All right, number 8, Notre Dame. They're down in 1. Their remaining games, a home game against Georgia Tech and at Stanford. For Notre Dame to get to the playoffs, of course, they need to win out, and they need a lot of chaos to happen ahead of them. They need 4 of those teams to lose a game and drop below Notre Dame. Number Number 9, Oklahoma State. Do not forget about the Cowboys. They still have a real shot to get to the playoffs. Last games at Texas Tech and then a home game against number 13, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State just needs to win one more game to ensure they get to the Big 12 championship game. But they need to win out to get to the playoffs. Number 10, Wake Forest. They're 9-1 right now. They're actually undefeated in the ACC because that loss against North Carolina doesn't count as a conference game. So they get at Clemson and at Boston College. If they just win one of those games, they are in the ACC championship game. But man, that's a tough way to get there. Both road trips. And I think Wake Forest still has a tiny shot to get to the playoffs. They must win out and win the ACC, and they need a lot of things to happen above them. Number 11, Baylor. They're 8-2. Last 2 games at Kansas State and then a home game against Texas Tech. Now, for Baylor to go to the Big 12 championship game, number 1, they need to win out, and they need Oklahoma to lose another game. And that probably will happen because Oklahoma looks bad. And we'll get to the Sooners here in just a minute. Right below Baylor, Ole Miss. They're 8-2. Last 2 games, Vanderbilt and at number 25, Mississippi State. Ole Miss still has a shot to get to the SEC championship. But first they have to win out, and they need Alabama to lose out. That's the only way they get to the SEC championship game because Alabama holds the tiebreaker. Number 13, Oklahoma. Last 2 games, Iowa State and at number 9, Oklahoma State. They get to the Big 12 championship game if they win out. That's all they have to do. They don't need help. They only have 1 loss in the Big 12 right now. If they win out, they're in the Big 12 championship game. But that road trip to Oklahoma State at the end of the season, that's going to be a tough one. And you have to get past Iowa State at home. So we'll see how the Sooners turn out. They could end up with a 3-game losing streak. All right, number 14, BYU. They're 8-2. Last 2 games at Georgia Southern and at USC. They have to win out to get to a 10-win season and to get to a New Year's Six Bowl. Plus, they also need Cincinnati to make the playoffs. If Cincinnati doesn't make the playoffs, they will get that spot in a New Year's Six Bowl. If Cincinnati does go to the playoffs, as long as BYU doesn't drop below a group of 5 team, they'll get the bid to a New Year's Six Bowl. Number 15, Wisconsin. Last 2 games, Nebraska and at Minnesota. They get to the Big Ten championship if they win out. Simple as that. Wisconsin's on a hot streak. That's a very doable schedule. They could be headed to the Big Ten championship game and possibly pull an upset in the Big Ten championship game, eliminating the Big Ten from the playoffs. So the Big Ten is actually pulling against Wisconsin right now. Number 16, Texas A&M. Last 2 games, Prairie View A&M and at LSU. They still have a shot to get to the SEC championship game, but first they have to win out. They need Alabama to lose out, and they need Ole Miss to lose to Vanderbilt but beat Mississippi State. They need all those events to happen specifically. That's the only way Texas A&M gets to the SEC championship game. So yeah, I don't think it's happening, but right now there's still hope for the Aggies to make the SEC championship game, even if it's only like 0.5%. Number 17, Iowa. Last 2 games, Illinois and at Nebraska. They can get to the Big Ten championship if they win out and Wisconsin loses another game. Wisconsin holds the tiebreaker over Iowa, so they do need Wisconsin to lose a game for them to get in. But the rest of their schedule is doable. However, don't overlook Illinois because Illinois has gone on the road and upset a few people this year. Number 18, Pitt. They're 8-2. Last 2 games, Virginia and at Syracuse. They'll get to the ACC championship game if they beat Virginia. That's all they have to do. Even if they go on the road, commit a blunder against the Syracuse Orange, if they beat Virginia, they're in the ACC championship. Simple as that. They're not getting to the playoffs. Number 19, San Diego State, 9-1. Last 2 games at UNLV and a home game against Boise State. Beware the Broncos. They have been going on the road and committing upsets. Now, they'll get to the Mountain West Championship if they win out, which they probably will. Of course, they have a real shot to get a 10-win season, but they also have a shot to get to a New Year's Six Bowl. And that's if they win out and somehow BYU slips up and they can jump BYU. They have to jump BYU to get that New Year's Six Bowl bid. Number 20, NC State, 7-3. Last 2 games, Syracuse and North Carolina. Number 21, Arkansas. Last 2 games at number 2, Alabama and Missouri. Yes, the Razorbacks. There's still a scenario for you guys to get to the SEC championship. First, you got to win out. Then you got to hope Alabama loses out. And you got to hope that Auburn loses to South Carolina, but not to Alabama. You need Alabama to lose out, but you need Auburn to lose another game. So you need Auburn to lose at South Carolina, but beat Alabama at home. Oh yeah, and you also need Ole Miss to lose out as well. So good luck with that scenario. It's still in play. There's still a shot, but it's a very long shot. Number 22, UTSA. They already have a 10-win season, 10-0, undefeated. Last 2 games, UAB and at North Texas. They get to Conference USA Championship if they beat UAB. That's right. UAB could still get to to the Conference USA Championship game if they win out. UTSA still has a small shot to get a New Year's Six bowl bid. They have to jump BYU and San Diego State. So they have to hope that BYU falls apart and San Diego State falls apart. Number 23, Utah. Last two games, home game against number 3, Oregon. Very big game. And a home game against Colorado. They get to the Pac-12 championship if they just win one more game. That's all they have to do. If they lose out and Arizona State wins out, then Arizona State would get there. So all you have to do is win one more game, Utah. That's it. And you could screw up Oregon's season by beating them at home. And screw up the Pac-12 getting to the playoffs as well. So a lot to be played for. Number 24, Houston. They're 9-1. Last two games, Memphis and at UConn. Houston is getting to the AAC championship no matter what. Even if they lost out, they would be going to the AAC championship game. And finally, number 25, Mississippi State. They're 6-4. Last two games, Tennessee State and number 12, Ole Miss. But unfortunately for Mississippi State fans, there is no scenario where the Bulldogs could get to the SEC championship game. Sorry, you just ran out of games. So there you go. All the scenarios that are still in play for the teams that are in the top 25 in the playoff rankings. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of chaos in these last 2 weeks. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you on my next show.